So today I am packing some floral photo cards. I have quite a number I want to get done, so you can come along with me while I do it. I want to get these prepped because I know I'm going to have quite a number going out the door here pretty soon. So I'm just going to do 10 of each. You remember the Heliconia ginger? One of my favorites. I took that photo at a Buddhist monastery garden that is in downtown Honolulu. If you ever go there, it's just a wonderful, wonderful place to go. But I also wanted to answer some of the questions I got when I put a query out a couple of days ago, basically saying, you know, I've been around this planet 65 times. And there's a lot I've learned in my travels that I think I could share and would be helpful. So one of the two common questions I got were from people who followed me for a while and maybe they just forgot the answer or they just wanted to hear it again. So I'm going to answer the questions. But the two most common questions I got from people are related to my sobriety, which I have no problem talking about, and also my career. And when I say career, I use that term very loosely because I have had a very lively career. I mean, I've done a lot of things. Once when I was setting about talking to a group of college students who asked me about the jobs I've had, I had to sit there and think, and I counted on my fingers and toes probably, and I've actually had 23 jobs in my lifetime. Now, part of that is because I've had to move and shift and adjust based on other people's needs, failures, whatever you want to call it. Life has a way of putting you in situations that you probably didn't want to be in, but you know what? You learn a lot from that. If everything went perfectly, I don't know that you'd ever learn any lessons. So while I wish I hadn't gone through all that stuff, I'm kind of glad I did because I am who I am. And I'm back to who I really am instead of faking it for so many years to try to satisfy all these other people around me. So when it comes to sobriety, I grew up with an alcoholic father, and being the youngest, I was home for the longest by myself with him, and it was not fun. There was a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of gaslighting, and the irony is I ended up getting myself into relationships with people that did the same things to me. They were verbally abusive, they gaslit me, and I had such a low level of self-esteem that I just let it happen for many years. And then I made a decision that I wanted to stop drinking. Now, stopping drinking and getting sober are two very different things. So I decided to stop drinking, and I did that for almost 9 years. Now, we call this being a dry drunk. That's when you just stop drinking. You haven't actually done anything to repair your alcoholism, to repair some of the trauma that you went through, whatever the other things are that contribute to a person's alcoholism. I didn't do anything to help that at all. And so I ended up a dry drunk. And so I did that for, like I said, 9 years. And then all of a sudden, I ended up getting divorced, which was a really smart thing to do. And through that process and a lot of therapy and getting kicked out of my therapist's office because I just wasn't doing what I needed to do to get sober, I went to an AA meeting and I went every single day for 60 days. And then I moved back to the mainland. I was living in Hawaii at the time. So shout out to all my sober brothers and sisters in Hawaii. They saved my life. Not gonna lie. They saved my life. I had to go back to the mainland and I went to meetings every day and I kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. unfortunately, I developed a codependent relationship with another alcoholic, and that kept me from being emotionally sober. So it took several more years for me to actually become emotionally sober. And that's a real tough one, because you don't really know when that light bulb clicks, but when it does, it's like an avalanche of enlightenment. You get all of these feelings, such as, oh my gosh, I failed all this time. I could have been sober, blah, blah, blah. And then you just accept it and say to yourself, wow, this is great. Okay, now I've got it. Oops. But you really don't got it. So when someone tells me they're a recovered alcoholic, I think, ooh, that's a dangerous, slippery slope. I am a recovering alcoholic because I will be recovering for the rest of my life. I don't have a problem saying that, because I would rather know that I'm working at it every single day, and that every single day, if I have a bobble, I can call a friend and say, hey, I need some help. I need to talk. I need to work through the process. I need to do my tasks, whatever I need to do to keep me from making that fatal error of taking that drink. And I'm not going to lie, there are times when I still think, wow, I think I'm okay. I could probably do that. Yeah, cannot, will not, should not, all of those nuts. So 10 years as of May 1st. And again, I'm going to, full disclosure, I had a relapse in October of 2019 that lasted 6 hours. No, it didn't even last 6 hours. It lasted like 2 hours. I called my sponsor. The next day I went to a meeting, restarted. But you know what? Although I keep that as a second sobriety date, I do not give up the first sobriety date, because, and I know that some of you out there that might be in a recovery program probably think that's wrong. You can think whatever you want. May 1st, 2015 is my sobriety date, because that is the day I woke up. That is the day that I took the step to actually get sober. October of 2019, that was resetting what I had started, but I never would have gotten emotionally sober, physically sober without May 1st, 2015. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful for my sponsors. I'm grateful for the people that I met in the rooms and that I continue to meet in the rooms. So if you are somebody that thinks you need help, whether it's alcohol, heroin, over-the-counter drugs, prescription drugs, eating, sex, whatever it is, there's somebody out there that can help you. And if you are too afraid to go to a physical meeting, there are still online meetings out there. Thanks to the pandemic, we have that available to us. So I would highly recommend it. And it might take you a few times to try that group that really works for you. And I'm not saying the group that will tell you what you want to hear, but the group that will really work for you. I was really lucky. I made that phone call, and that group was a godsend. I remember the very first night I went. I remember the people I met. I remember what they said to me. And I remember 3 days later asking someone to be my sponsor and going down that road. So although in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a whole anonymous thing, I don't want to be anonymous, because if I do relapse, it's part of the process. I hope that I don't. I hope that 2-hour period never comes back to haunt me. I hope that I don't ever relapse. If I do, I know that I can get back in. So that doesn't scare me. What scares me is not taking that step, not making that phone call, not going to a meeting. That's what scares me. So I do all those things, and I read every day. I talk to someone every day. I do the work every day. And even if I'm not at a meeting, I know that the people I'm with during the day probably will help me, and I will help them just in being decent human beings. So if that's something that you need help with, there's a place out there for you. I've had a good, solid life that I hope lasts for several more years, but I've done a lot and I've experienced a lot. I've been through alcoholism. I've been divorced. I've lost jobs. I've been in car wrecks, almost died twice. So there's a lot I've gone through, and I think I've got some advice, but more than that, I've got perspective. And perspective, as I think, is way more important than someone actually saying, this is what I think you should do. If I ask somebody, give me your perspective on this, they're giving me their thoughts, their experiences. They're not telling me what they think I should do. They're giving me an example. And I can take examples and I can choose the one that I think will work for me. I have to be careful that I don't choose the easy route, that I actually choose one that I have to work through and will help me along the way. So one of the other questions that I get asked a lot is related to my, career. I guess that's the best way to term it. I went to college to become a teacher. My dad was a teacher. My great aunt was a teacher. My uncle was a teacher. I mean, there's a lot of teachers in my family. And I was good at teaching people how to do things. I know that from experiences I had in high school. I really wanted to go to school to be a chef. I also loved music and thought continuing to play music would be cool. But my dad talked me out of it. And you know, he was so proud that I got into his alma mater, and truth be told, it was the only school I got into. I know, I did okay in high school, but I did okay because I avoided all the hard stuff. Well, hard stuff for me. I didn't take upper level math, I didn't take upper sciences, so I was limited on where I could go. But I did study languages. I studied Spanish, French, and German, and then when I was teaching, I took a summer to study intensive Russian. I love languages, and so I saw myself teaching languages for my entire career. And I did do that for 5 years, but then I got sidetracked, and I got sidetracked by the person I was married to, who I let them treat me like I belonged to them, really. For the longest time, I thought that I wanted to do all these things, that I wanted to participate in developing a company and having our own business and all of this. But it became very clear to me after a time that I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to be in the classroom. I loved being in the classroom. And after being out of it for 5 years, I just really didn't know how I could get back in. Well, I was out of it for more than 5. I was out of it for 9 years. I didn't know how I could get back into it. But the time came for me to do it, and I was able to. I was a substitute teacher, and I loved it. And then I went back into it, and then again, the allure of more money, or the need for more money, crept in, and I became a school administrator, and I just got myself into a place that was not good. I ended up in a school district that, well, let me just say, their values did not align with mine. And it was a mutual decision for me to leave after 2 years. And I wanted to continue teaching or working as a K-12 administrator, but unfortunately, I needed to just move on. And so I ended up being the dean at an ITT campus, which I thoroughly loved. I think of all of my education experiences, it ranks in the top, probably 2, maybe even the top. The faculty I had were absolutely amazing. So if any of you are watching this, know that I love you to death and I will love you forever and always appreciate the time we had together. We did some great stuff, and our students achieved some amazing things that I think none of them thought they would ever be able to achieve because they didn't go to a standard 4-year college. And I moved into the allied health colleges again to make more money. And again, I got myself into a company or 2 companies that were just not doing things according to Hoyle. One of them ended up getting closed down by the Department of Ed long after I had left. I bailed from that, and I'm glad I did because I did not want to be tainted by all of that nastiness. So all that to say that when I did finally leave the education sector, I was burnt out, really burnt out. And while I was still there, when I was working for the Department of Education in Hawaii, I got my personal trainer license, and I worked as a personal trainer and a group exercise specialist. I went on to also get my nutrition certification so that I could work with clients more holistically, and I absolutely adored that. And I came back to the mainland from Hawaii, and unfortunately, right when I got my dream job as a nutrition specialist at UCI Medical Center, I was in a near-fatal car wreck. Now, I was in one in 1985, but this one was really, really, like, that was almost it. And I was not able to keep doing what I was doing. So I had to completely reinvent myself once again. So this is where the whole 23 jobs comes in. I mean, from the time I left high school, working for a bank, and then, getting my teaching job, and then leaving that and working on my own, and then, or working with my then husband, then going back to teaching, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are 23 jobs, 23 separate jobs. A couple of them were actually for the same place, but 23 separate jobs. So I tapped into some other skills I had, mainly cooking, and I got a job as a server. And I went back to Hawaii briefly, and I thought, well, maybe I can try my hand at school. I had a brain injury though, bad idea, had to bail from school. Thought I could finally go back to school and be a bona fide chef. Didn't work, didn't happen. So I kept on doing what I was doing. I served, I baked, I cooked, and I really worked my way up through the ranks and was a pastry chef and a sous chef, a line cook. I loved those jobs. Even through the pandemic, did that kind of work. And then as the pandemic everybody was coming back to work, I left restaurants and went to work for an amusement park and a large department store at the same time. Did that seasonally. And then I got really lucky and I ended up working at Disneyland. Autopia was my first attraction. I loved it. My favorite. It was so fun. It was so much fun. But one of those injuries from one of the car wrecks crept in, and I could not function. I could not get through a shift without horrible pain in my legs. So I thought, well, since I can't get recast, maybe I'll work a desk job. Maybe that would be the answer. Oh, wrong answer. Did that for a year and had a minor stroke. I, to this day, will tell you, I feel like that stroke was because of my supervisor. I'll never be able to prove it, but I'm telling you, the amount of undue stress that person put us under was ridiculous. So I left that job and thought, now what am I going to do? I don't know if I'll be able to work again. And luckily I was able to take my Social Security early, which I wish I hadn't had to do, but I did. And now I'm glad I did. And then once I was ready, I was able to go back to work. And lo and behold, I was able to go back to Disney, but not in the capacity in attractions. They had me work as a candy maker because of my pastry chef background. And that was okay. But it just really wasn't what I wanted to be doing. And so with almost a year went by and I was able to get back into attractions. Again, that's the 23 jobs. So circumstance, not because I'm a terrible employee, not because it's just, circumstance happens and you've got to make decisions. And sometimes those decisions mean you have to leave a place. So I did. I left. And I went to attractions. And where did I end up? I ended up in Galaxy's Edge. Now, those of you who know me well know that that is probably the biggest irony on the face of the planet. Because on May 25th, 1977, after turning 16 and getting my license, I skipped school and I went to see that movie. A few of my friends went with me. Some of them remember that, some of them don't. But that moment is indelibly etched in my brain. And now I work for Honda. And who knows where the next path may lead. I mean, maybe I'll end up working in another one of the lands at some point, but I really love attractions. It's fun. And when I'm not doing that, I'm working on, things like this and this and this and this. I love doing it. I loved taking the photographs and I love making things for people out of them. So I hope that answers 2 of those questions. If you have more questions for me, I'd love to answer them. Send them my way. You can comment down below. And if you want any of these floral photo cards, they are in my Etsy shop. Thanks for supporting me. And if you want, like and subscribe. I'm trying to build this channel so that it can be part of what I do regularly. I'm working really hard to make regular videos and topical things, not just, oh, here's a new card I made, but something interesting, something about life. It's what I loved to do when I was knitting and weaving and sewing and quilting. I talked about life stuff because that's kind of why we're all here, isn't it? We do things, but then it's our life and what we have in common, and that's what's really, really important. So you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.